We, one of the things that has been so important to me at a character of the church, the value of my own self, the teachers that are a part of the rotation, one of the things that we try to always project is this, an accurate portrayal of the heart of God. Because if we're not careful, what can happen is this. If we say the right words, but we get the wrong heart, it messes everything up. We can be completely lost in, we've said like religious practices or laws or traditions. We can get so far off track saying the right words, but pursuing the wrong heart. And so occasionally you come across a story in the Bible that just sort of sifts that out, where it's sort of a story in the Bible where Jesus makes it a priority to illuminate or expose who he is. Matthew chapter 17, verse 24. We're going to read 24, 25, 26, 27. It says, after Jesus and his disciples arrived in Capernaum, the collectors of the two-drachma temple tax came to Peter and asked, doesn't your teacher pay the temple tax? Yes, he does, he replied. When Peter came into the house, Jesus was the first to speak. What do you think, Simon? He asked. From what do the kings of the earth collect duty and taxes? From their own children or from others? He's saying when a king collects a tax, does he collect the tax from the people in the country or from his own children? From others, Peter answered. Then the children are exempt, Jesus said to him. He is making a statement about his identity by saying, then if it's for the temple, if this tax is for God, I should be exempt. It's a small little detail, but it's one that Jesus makes a point to make. But so that we may not cause offense, go to the lake, throw out your line, take the first fish you catch, open its mouth, and you will find a 4-drachma coin. Take it and give it to them for my tax and for yours. There is a mountain of good buried in a story that seems so simple. I remember reading this story out of like the children's Bible, and I remember Peter like holding the fishing pole, and there's like a fish, and there's a coin in his mouth. And as a kid, I just remember accepting the simplicity of the story, and you're like, cool. I don't know what's there. But here's the problem. Because I heard that story so much as a child, if I'm not careful, I kind of gloss over when I read it again, and I never stop and go, what is going on there? What is the significance of everything that we just read? There's an encounter taking place, because you can say God. Everybody says, I believe in God. Great. Listen, that's better than nothing. I'm not saying that's bad. But the problem is, you can believe in the nature of God that's inaccurate and be completely lost, or believe in the nature of God based on the word and be prepared to sort of keep going through life. It's important that you decide who you believe God to be. Not that I believe in God. Who do you believe God to be? There is two battle lines in this story of the fish and the coin and the taxes. There's two battle lines. One is the God of never enough encountering the God of more than enough. This story is a power story of Jesus determining his nature. We'll just start through it. El Shaddai is one of the names given to God. It means the God of more than enough. Okay. In Buddhist teaching, now listen, I know that hackles people a little bit. I know that you can kind of get people's hesitancy up when you start talking about Buddhist teaching. But they have a teaching that is actually a really, really solid foundational teaching, that desire is suffering. Stick with me. I know this is going to sound really simple, but in theory, the fastest way to have everything that you want is to only want the things that you already have. It's a trick. Ready? I can guarantee that you get everything that you want. Change what you want. And they're like, Buddhism seems like kind of a cheat code. But as we know, and you may have this reaction as you're listening, like, wait a minute, that doesn't seem like what I want. Because as people, we really struggle knowing when to say enough. It's just not in our nature to achieve something and go, good, that's enough. We will achieve our goal. And the minute we have a goal, I can't tell you how many people that I've known that have gone through this exact scenario just in the rodeo world. Let's just take the rodeo world as an example, but it doesn't matter what you do, you'll know this to be true. Their only goal in life, I just want to make the national finals. That's it. That's all I want to do, okay? And then it happens. Then what? I just want to make them again. See, you expand what you want because it's how you motivate yourself. I want more. I need more money. I need more power. I need more security. I need more validation. It's just one of those things. And actually, the sad part is I'm old enough now to have seen people that have this big, giant career and things have gone well, and then they get a little bit older, and then there's sort of a diminishing return, like maybe they're not winning what they used to win. And instead of going, you know what, I had a good career. I have enough. I got what I wanted. I achieved more than I wanted to achieve. It's enough. They go, I just want one more. And before they ever get their one more, they give everything that they'd made in their career all back, and they end up broke. Now, I'm using rodeo as an example, but the problem is this. We have this weird way of guaranteeing that we are never satisfied. We are never happy. We are never fully satisfied with what we've accomplished or what we've done or what God's done in our life. Because if desire is suffering, if what the Buddhists teach about desire is suffering, then unlimited desire equals unlimited suffering. Stick with me here. That if we never learn to adjust what we want or say that something is enough or fully accept that there's like an end to things, then what happens is our lives are this constant pursuit, always wanting, never having. It's like the definition of hell. It's like we live in hell before death in this life of always wanting, never having. Let me explain why this story is setting that up. It says the collectors of the two-drachma temple tax came to Peter and asked, doesn't your teacher pay the temple tax? Yes, he does. This tax was not the Romans, like the tax collectors that everybody hated, the boo hiss taxes that they were paying to the Romans that were unfair and being forced and they were coerced into giving. This was not that. This was a temple tax. This was amongst the Israelites. This was a tax that had originated only during census. They would only take a temple tax during census to kind of keep up the temple, make sure everything was okay. It was rare. If you want to go look it up, it's in Exodus 30, 11 through 16. Like it talks about the development of the temple tax. It's, we're never going to do it. We'll do it sometimes. We'll do it again. Only when it's needed, only when it's necessary, only when we're in a bind, just to keep up the temple. This is where it starts all the way back in Exodus. So you fast forward to Jesus' day, and people had done what people do, and all of a sudden it's an annual tax every single year, whether we need it or not. This is my favorite part about government, is they never say, you know what, maybe instead of taking more taxes, we need to take a look at how we're spending it. Maybe we're taking more taxes than we need to take because we're not spending it very well. Maybe we need to rein ourselves in. Even hearing it, you're like, yeah, right, it's the government. They are people, and people have this history of more. I need $1. Okay, you got $1. I need $10. Okay, you got $10. I need $100. Okay, I need $1 million, $1 billion, $1 jillion, $1 trillion. I mean, it's like we never reach that moment where we say, enough, I've got enough, we have enough. And that's exactly what's happening with the temple tax. So they come to Jesus. Listen, this is where it starts to get interesting. They come to Jesus. God's name in the Old Testament, El Shaddai, one of his names is El Shaddai, the God of more than enough. They come to, this is mind-bending. I'm not even sure if I'm going to be able to express it in a way that makes sense, but we'll try. They come to Jesus asking him to participate in a tax for the temple that had progressed into the God of never enough practices. And Jesus participates. He goes, yeah, okay, I'll pay it. This tax represented just an insatiable need for more and more and more, always more. Let me give you another example. The word, I learned this from Lacey actually, and I don't remember where she learned it, but I did some research on it. And let me tell you what I came up with. The word chronology, we use the word time, operates according to chronology. And we get the word chronology from the ancient Greek word chronos. And chronos was a mythical god that people worshipped and they believed in. It was kind of the Zeus-esque type god. And here's some of the nature and the personality of Kronos. Ready? He was thought to, his legend, his story was, he was all destructive and all devouring. He was like a hole that you pour stuff into and it's never full. It's never enough. Always pouring more in. The legend was he had castrated and disposed of his own father so that he didn't have to be under his control. And then to try to maintain his own power, he had consumed all of his own offspring. I mean, this God that people worshiped was the definition of the God of never enough. And they would sacrifice and they would pour into it and they would offer sacrifices, ready for this, including their own children. Throughout history, people would sacrifice their own children to the God of Kronos, which is never enough, the God of never enough. You give and you give and you give, and he takes and he takes and he takes. a God who will never say enough, a God who never relents. And you start to think, like, where does that end? How much time would a God of never enough require? Eventually, all of it. How much money does a God of never enough require? All of it. How many relationships? All of it. And then all of a sudden, once you start to think, it starts to feel like we would be a slave to a God like that. If that God was real, we would be a slave, because no matter how much we do, it's never enough. No matter how much we work, the work is never done. No matter how much we give, it's never enough. We always need more. We are slaves to that. And then, and here's what's been just sort of mind-numbing to me is actually when you look at how the temple tax had progressed, pretty soon it was like more taxes, more taxes, more taxes. In so many different ways, religion almost would lead you to believe that God's nature is a God of never enough. You give and you give and you do and you serve and you obey and it's never enough. Even in the way that we approach a Sabbath. Follow the rules. Our rules almost increase on Sabbath. We never say enough. We never rest. What do you call someone? Don't say it out loud, wherever you are. What do you call someone who can't say enough when they drink? They start to drink, but they never say enough, and they just go until they pass out. Call the person an alcoholic. You would say that alcohol has control of that person's life because they don't have the ability to say enough. It's never enough. What do you call someone who never stops working? When they're home, they're thinking about work. When they wake up, they go to work. They're always in their mind. They're always at work. You call a person a workaholic because they don't know when to say it's enough. Do you start to see the pattern? So when they come to Jesus, this is what's so fascinating. They come to Jesus and they say, we need a temple tax. Do you, or do you just collect it because you don't know when to say enough is enough? I've started a podcast, the BAMO podcast. If you look at it, it's Marty Solomon. If you want to look it up, it's phenomenal. But one of the things he points out that's always bugged me is in the Garden of Eden, why did God put the fruit in the middle of the garden saying not to touch it? Here's why. Because the ability to say enough is what distinguishes man from animals. Animals never say enough. If you put a flake of hay in a pen, an animal eats it. That's just, you wouldn't expect anything different. You would never expect self-restraint from a beast, from an animal. But by putting something as possible in the garden, but saying don't touch it, he is allowing people to operate in humanity that says we need to reach a place that we say enough, that we are our most human when we reach a point in our life where we say it's enough. Ready for this? So again, and I'm only using one reference in the story of Jesus, but think about this. In our own lives, if somebody works and works and works and works and never stops, how much is enough? Never enough. Always got to have more. Alcoholism, addiction, drug addiction, a desire for this, a desire for that. People still, in 2022, as advanced as we are, as smart as we are, as far as we've come as a society, people are still sacrificing their children, their wives, their finances to the God of never enough. How many relationships between parents and children have been broken down because of addiction? Parents that weren't able to say enough, whether it's work or alcohol or drugs or hobbies. I mean, we are capable of going into slavery with anything that we don't ever deem to be enough. Okay, I think we've established the nature of a God of never enough. Secondly, verse 25, it says, when Peter came into the house, Jesus was the first to speak. It says, what do you think, Simon? From whom do the kings of the earth collect duty and taxes? From their own children or from others? From others, Peter answered. Then Jesus said, we are exempt. It's a Christological statement. It is Jesus establishing his identity as the Son of God. But he doesn't stop there. Verse 27, but so that we may not cause offense, go to the lake and throw out your line. Take the first fish you catch, open its mouth, and you will find a 4-drachma coin. Take it and give it to them for my taxes and for yours. Okay. This part makes me laugh. The reason it makes me laugh is it's almost like I can see Peter's expression. I can almost see it. When we try to justify never saying enough, here's how we try to justify it. We try to justify our behavior by the need. I don't say enough because I can't ever say enough because I take a workaholic and you go, hey, you're a workaholic. You need to learn how to like say enough is enough. I can't. I'm broke. I'm paying all the bills. I'm the one that's a provider. It's like that the need justifies the endeavor, right? And so when you think about the life of Peter, specifically Peter, when Jesus found him was what? He was a fisherman. How many nights do you think Peter was out there trying to pay his bills, trying to get by, fishing, begging God, like, oh God, can you just let me catch a fish? Anybody ever been here? You're at work. Please just let this go through. I need a bonus, something. How many times in our life, why can't I just have a breakthrough? God, horse trainers. Why won't a horse sell? Why am I not getting the customers? Whatever example, it doesn't matter what you do. This is definitely happened, that Peter would have been fishing, needing for the fishing to go well and praying like, God, I just need more. I need more. So that's why this is funny to me, because Jesus sends Peter to go fishing. Of all the things Jesus could have sent Peter to do, he could have said, walk down the street and you're going to find a coin. Or he could have done it in any number of ways. He specifically sends Peter back to a pursuit that was familiar, that had probably represented slavery in Peter's life at some point, of like, just go, work, more. How much is enough? Never enough. I need more fish. I need more money. I need a bigger house. I mean, this is capitalism at its peak. We need more. And you know that at some point, fishing had represented prison for Peter. Never enough. It's never enough. Just because that's human nature. So I can just see Peter out there fishing, catching a fish that has money in its mouth, and realizing that Jesus has the power to have provided the whole time. Can you see, surely I'm not alone. Don't you think that Peter had this moment of like, am I a joke to you, Jesus? Is this a joke? Like, do you realize how many times I've prayed and now I just come down here, I'm in the ministry and you send me back and you make me realize it's almost this. When Jesus shows how easy it is to provide, especially through a means that had been so difficult for Peter in his life, Jesus comes in, opens the door, makes it so easy. It's almost like Jesus is specifically making a mockery out of the panic. It's almost like Jesus, because the panic is how we justify never enough. I need more. And so when Jesus literally makes it so easy of like, okay, here's what I need you to do, Peter. You ready? We're going to participate in this little tax that they're doing, okay? Okay, all right. I need you to go fishing. Peter's like, oh, boy, I don't know. Sometimes those fish are really hard to catch. Jesus is like, just stick with me. He goes down there, gets a bite. Of course he gets a bite. Reels it up, there's a coin. It's almost as if Jesus is like, hey, I'm just reminding you, like, none of this is hard. The reason you panic, the reason I panic, the reason we all panic, is because there's this never enough element that says, I'll be happy once I'm in charge. I'll be happy once I'm in control of the circumstances. I'm going to be able to be happy once I know I need more tax. I need more income. I need more money. I need to give it more time. I need the business to grow. I need everybody to be okay. I need more security. I need all these things. And then I'll be happy. My phone just made a sound, but I have no clue what it was. It's like Jesus is literally to Peter specifically making a mockery. Okay. I was talking to Lacey about all this. And she said, okay, let me tell you. She said, my deepest desire is not for money or power or validation, nothing like that. She said, it might be important to note that my deepest desire, my very deepest desire in life is for the security of my children, that nobody ever hurt my children. And I had to stop for a minute because I'm like, well, that doesn't really land like in the vein of how we would necessarily think of desire landing. That seems like a very just, valid point. Seems like something you should be allowed to want. Here's what I think. I think it's still true. I think everything that we learn about desire and money and power and all this, the rule of more than enough is still true. Let me tell you what I'm talking about. When we take our deepest, most justified, I think that's an important distinction, our deepest, most justified desires, You go back, remember the God of never enough, the desire is suffering. What that means is this: your place of deepest desire is also going to be the place of your deepest suffering. So what that means is Lacey and I, because I would say that's pretty much mine too. Like, I want my kids to be okay. I would say if I got to pick, that's probably my deepest desire in life, is that my kids are okay. But that also means it's going to be the area of my deepest suffering. That's going to be the place where I lose the most sleep. I worry the most. I'm the most, in my own head. That's going to be the place where I'm the most likely to go and never say enough, to never pull up, to never really trust that God knows what he's doing. That is the most likely place where I'm going to struggle. But if I can't ever say enough in my desire for my kids to be okay, if I never reach a point where I'm able to say enough, then I'm never able to fully put it into the control of God. I'm never able to take it to Jesus and fully hand it off and go, hey, in the same way that you can catch a fish with money in its mouth, I know that you're able to protect my kids in a way that's meaningful in their lives, that brings about the best for them. Because it's easy. I think sometimes it's easy for me to believe that about myself, that, that God loves me, wants the best. He's at work on my behalf for myself and for Lacey, for the people at church. That's actually the reason, like, pastoring is a little bit easier for me maybe than most. I think sometimes pastors cling to the okayness of their congregation. It's hard to be hands off. It's actually fairly easy for me. But with my kids, it's harder. But the concept of what I'm trying to explain is still true, that if there's something that I desire so deeply that I cling to it so tightly, I never say it's enough. Listen to this. I'm actually going to begin to harm my children. I'll become the source of harm for my children because I take it into my own hands and I decide it's up to me to protect them. I can't let Jesus do it. I can't go to the God of more than enough. I have to go to the God of never enough. How much protection is enough? More. I always need more protection, more security. And pretty soon I start killing the relationship with my kids. I'm actually starting to sacrifice my kids' well-being because I have to be in control to make sure nobody ever hurts them. When we take it to Jesus, think of this. Your deepest desires in life, whatever those may be, when you take those to Jesus, you're okay, it's enough. I can only go so far. I've got to put my okayness in the hands of a God of more than enough. We get relief from our own desires. We get relief from our own desires that are the main source of suffering. We get to say enough. I can only take my desires so far, then I have to set them down. I have to sacrifice my own desires at the feet of Jesus. And that without understanding who Jesus is, that would be impossible. I can't imagine setting down the safety and security and the okayness of my children into the hands of anybody else other than a God that I could trust. That's why knowing, well, I believe in God, well, that's only important if you know who he is, because at some point you're going to have to take your deepest desires and set them at the feet of that God and go, it has to be enough. I have to take a day off. I have to step away from this. I have to invest in time in other things. You see what I mean? It's the health. It's only the few little areas that we can't let go that cause us the most damage. The trust that he is more than enough. I got a weird one. I know this has kind of been a heady sermon, but try to think of this. I actually think that desire, things that we want the most, whatever that may be, has become a form of idolatry. See, the explanation of idolatry to me is this. It's where you think your good comes from. Image is a big one right now. You see people protecting their image because they think that their image is where they get all their good. They protect their finances because they think their finances is where their security and their okayness comes from. Whatever it is that you desire has become an idol. Think of this. If the thought of setting it down gives you anxiety and you go, I can't set it down because if I set it down, I might lose it, then you're a slave to it. You're a slave to the things that you want the most. Ready for this? If your greatest fear in your marriage is that your spouse is going to be unfaithful, you overcorrect and you take the life out of that relationship by removing the freedom, and the relationship is far more susceptible. Do you see what I'm saying? The God of never enough versus the God of more than enough. That when we set down, if we're willing to set down and go, then I don't feel entitled to everything that I want. God, this is what I want, but ultimately I'm going to surrender what I want to you. I'm going to follow you the best that I know how to follow you. I want to be obedient. And when you find yourself wrapped around the axle, that's the best time to go. Okay, I'm going to set it down. I'm not going to think about it. I'm not going to worry about it today. I'm taking a day off from it. This is one of my favorite things about Chick-fil-A. They said to the guy that started Chick-fil-A, you can't be effective only being open 6 days a week. Now listen, I get very upset when I go to Chick-fil-A on Sundays and it's closed, like the rest of us. But the business model is more profitable in 6 days than the other ones are in 7. Do you see? Because it knows when to say. It's a business model based on knowing when to say enough is enough. It is the secret of living in the fullness and the peace and the rest and the relief of a God of more than enough, rather than the demands and the chaos, and it's never enough, and we give and we give and we give and it's never enough. How many people need a break from the it's never enough? What I love about the story of Jesus and the fish is that he does not want to cause offense to the exact same people who would later crucify him. It's interesting to me. But in doing so, he draws almost a mockery to the panic of self-provisions. It says, I'm the God of more than enough. And if you know that he's the God of more than enough, the panic that we feel about self-providing and taking care of ourselves and managing and trying to be the chicken with the giant wings that takes over all the chicks and makes sure everything's okay. It's like, you got to know when to say enough is enough. You have to know when to say enough is enough, because in those moments where you go, I could go further, but I'm choosing not to, I'm going to say it's enough, you are operating in your most human sense and the thing that separates you from the beasts. The peace of knowing when to say enough is enough by following a God who says he's the God of more than enough. I hope that makes sense. I realize that's a confusing way to wrap that up. I'm going to pray that it lands in a way that makes sense. Let's pray. Lord, when I think about the story of Kronos and all that he required more work, more time, more money, more sacrifice. And I see that actually in our society. It seems familiar. As crazy as that story sounds, it seems familiar, where we just go and we never rest and we never pull up. We're never willing to say no to ourselves. We're never willing to say the word enough. God, it's almost like we've decided that you have the nature of Kronos, which is that if we have to keep going and going and going and never rest and never pull up, we're never willing to question our desires. And so because we never limit our desires, we never limit our own suffering, we just live in a life of panic and chaos all the time. Broken relationships, all the things that come with never saying enough. Lord, I think of Peter out there catching a fish with coin in its mouth. He had to have thought, like, this whole time, you could have done this whole time. But God, in our lives, I pray that you just draw us to your heart, the God of more than enough. Help us to see you and understand who you are, so that in moments of panic that feel justified, we'll set that down and let those go and move away from them. Lord, help us to look for areas in our life where we need to learn to say enough is enough. I pray in Jesus' name, amen.